born to our young parents in late summer of 1970. The nurses at the Milwaukee hospital nicknamed him the hippie baby because he had a bushy head, thick, dark hair. To Mom, he was a perfect little angel, a gift from God to hold whenever she could and always love unconditionally. To Dad, he was a little companion to share his passion for life with and to take all around town. Soon, Patrick kept surprising everyone. Like when his dark head of hair was quickly replaced with lemon blonde, or when at 18 months after my mom explained how the potty chair worked, he immediately trained himself overnight. Or when at preschool age, everyone thought he was so much older because he was so bright, talked so well, played for hours on his own, and was so content in being independent. Named after our mom, Patricia, with our dad's name, Michael, as his middle, Patrick was the perfect mix of our parents. He had Mom's common sense, fairness, and heart of gold, and was always willing to help others. And he had Dad's love of sports and the great outdoors, sharing his passions with everyone he knew through stories, jokes, and just hanging out. Patrick loved Mom reading bedtime stories to him, especially The Alligator and the Jackal, and watching Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire movies with her, which led to him wanting to dance at a young age. Mom did everything she could to provide exposures to the arts. She took him to tap and ballet classes, as well as community theater. He loved sitting beside her on the couch, watching New Zoo Review and the cartoon Speed Racer. Later, the two of them loved watching Doctor Who, along with Ted and Stuart. Patrick and Dad were almost like brothers, collecting sports memorabilia, memorizing sports trivia, playing and watching sports of pretty much every type: baseball, football, basketball, hunting, and fishing. They loved traveling together for sporting events and once overseas to England. They were both work hard, play hard type men, always taking care of business. Patrick was a children's model at Dad's JCPenney store, looking dapper in the dark denim leisure suits he modeled. Our grandma Odessa told him when he was 10 that he was going to steal all the ladies' hearts when he grew up with his suede blue eyes and handsome looks. Patrick was a bright child and was identified as being an advanced learner at a young age. But what wasn't identified early was that his brain processed language differently. Patrick was later diagnosed with dyslexia at a time when it wasn't fully understood. Unfortunately, this led to some adults and peers underestimating his abilities. Patrick was also a loving and protective older brother. Our brother Ted was born with spina bifida when Patrick was 17 months old. Ted remembers feeling really cared for by Patrick. At a young age, Ted had to endure sleeping in a full-body cast, which would have been hard for anyone, but especially a young child. Ted says Patrick would come by and lay by him during the night to give him comfort. Ted and Patrick were like two peas in a pod. Ted remembers Mom dressing up the two as Elvis and taking them to the community theater where they both had parts in plays. And Ted loved when Dad took the two of them fishing, sometimes nearby at forest preserves, and other times here in Plain, where they had to occasionally face a stray bull out at pasture. Patrick always made me feel loved, not in spite of my spunky kid self, but because of it. I followed Patrick into dance at Junior World School of Dance, and remember the four of us having dance contests on top of our chunky little coffee table as kids, just after watching TV's Saturday Night Fever. Patrick always stole the show. Patrick loved theatrics and belonged on a stage, and was chosen for parts in school plays and local theater. I remember acting out scenes from The Dukes of Hazzard with my brothers. Patrick got to be the hero, making something from nothing, and doing it with style. As a young child, Patrick couldn't wait to tune into the latest Eagle Knievel stunts. Clearly, Patrick had a love for risk-taking from a young age. Stuart remembers Patrick putting pedal to the metal on backcountry roads around here when he let his high school car with a 455 Super Duty motor in it climb up to speeds around 150 miles per hour. As a young teenager, Patrick came to live with our grandparents when our parents were going through a difficult divorce. Those handful of years he spent with them were quite influential for Patrick. He loved living and playing with his Bavarian Catholic farming roots, living in the same turn-of-the-century craftsman his dad grew up in. Grandma Marie was strict, but she made the rules clear and he knew how to follow them. She provided structure and routine and made the best Maldashans around. Grandpa Mike became like a second dad to Patrick, coming to his sporting games and being a hands-on teacher. In playing, Patrick learned how to make things and fix things. He learned about duty and making do with what you have. He loved hearing stories told by our grandparents and others from their generation and always seemed at ease with them. And while living and playing, Patrick learned about dying when our grandpa became ill with lung cancer. Patrick helped take care of him, waking up in the middle of the night to go by his side when he called out, and he helped Grandma by taking on Grandpa's responsibilities around the house. After high school, Patrick followed Dad to Mankato, Minnesota, where he went to South Central College earning a welding degree. After working for various companies, Patrick started his own business, manufacturing rear ends and selling them through eBay. As an independent contractor, he also repaired and manufactured car and road parts for companies such as Mercury Racing. Whenever he could, he offered jobs to anyone he knew, anyone who wanted to learn. While working in the shop, he provided training, friendship, and support. Patrick was a jack of all trades. He could fix anything. He knew how to get things done, learning by trial and error, gaining skills that can only be obtained through hard work and experience. Mom remembers being invited by Patrick to a manufacturing expo at McCormick Place in Chicago. She shares how Patrick's in-depth knowledge of mechanics and how things work really showed as he explained the nitty-gritty of each exhibit they stopped at. Though the best part for Mom was simply being in his presence. Stuart remembers many times when Mr. Fix-It Patrick stepped in to save the day, whether it was replacing Dad's sump pump during a thunderstorm or fixing his own Corvette roadside when it broke down on the many trips to visit Dad in Indiana. Stuart says Patrick had a common sense, get-her-done knack that he really admired. During his 20s, Patrick's mechanical skills blended with his love of racing. Known as Legal 84, Patrick was a professional race car driver. He participated in the Enduro race in Newell, Minnesota, moving up to modified races. And like everything, Patrick shared his passion, building lifelong friendships with others who also had a passion for motorsports. Building and rebuilding cars together, sometimes from scratch, patching up cars after racing runs, doing race car park runs, taking trips to the Brickyard 400. Stuart remembers how he and all his friends thought Patrick was cooler than cool. They couldn't wait to see which car would show up when he came to visit Mom. Whether it be the Jeep Renegade, the 70s Grand Prix, his 80s Camaro Z28 with T-tops, Patrick was a cool guy with a cool car that somehow he always kept running. Later in life, Patrick grew into a Santa Claus figure. He was solid, hearty, and jovial. He added a few more inches to that Bavarian belly, and his smile became even bigger. He had a face you just wanted to hold, and he had twinkling eyes and a smile that were truly magical. Patrick's giving heart kept growing bigger, always giving more than taking, offering more than asking. People have said that Patrick often reminded them of the Michael Landon character in the 80s TV show Highway to Heaven, because he always seemed to show up to help whenever and wherever needed, with a twinkle in his eye. This was Patrick. But underneath this, Patrick had traumatic pain that was understandable, leading to relationships that were unresolved and longings that were unfulfilled. The bitter sweetness of his oversized heart, full of romanticism and charity, was that the impacts of early life trauma made it difficult for Patrick to also receive love, ask for help, and show his pain. Patrick loved his family. He was a dutiful son and grandson. He was a loving and protective big brother. He preserved memories and traditions He shared family stories, making sure they weren't forgotten. He kept a picture of her mom and dad at his bedside. But Patrick's idea of family went way beyond his family of origin. The Patrick family was everyone around him and anyone that needed help. At his heart, Patrick was a teacher, a mentor, and this was his true calling. Patrick had that perfect mix of providing gentle support and positive feedback, while also having the right amount of push to help people reach their potential. He described his teaching philosophy as this: everyone learns at a different pace, so teaching requires caring and patience. In his local community in Lake Crystal, Minnesota, Patrick coached numerous kids in baseball on a volunteer basis, spending hours with their teams and families, in batting cages in the winter and on baseball diamonds in the summer. While Patrick teaching baseball skills helped many advance to all-star teams, his coaching lessons extended way beyond the field. Patrick's life lessons were about dedication, perseverance, commitment, and patience. Patrick's passion for mentoring kids in baseball programs brought him to the Dominican Republic, where he found a home away from home. He ran youth baseball training sessions and helped out with various infrastructure building projects. He organized clothing and sporting equipment drives in Minnesota for donation to the Dominican Algodon region. Patrick's passion for baseball, mentoring, working, and helping was truly expansive. Patrick became a life-changing person for many people at critical points in their lives, times when outcomes are determined and paths chosen. Patrick provided positive and caring support with a helping hand or high five, creating that beautiful positive feedback loop, steering people in the right direction. For Stuart, Patrick was his big brother hero who he called Buppy. Stuart followed Patrick, looking up to him, wanting to be near him anytime he could. For Ted, Patrick's entrepreneurial spirit, dedication to everything he did, and ability to build strong friendships was inspirational in his own life. And for me, Patrick helped me process the complex feelings I felt towards our dad after he died. Patrick believed in God and was a lifelong Catholic, but he was never sanctimonious about his spiritual life. He wasn't self-righteous. He knew he was as flawed as anyone else. He had desires and things that made him mad, and his worn body was a constant reminder of his humanness. Patrick's hands were grease-stained, scarred from burns, and permanently calloused. The effects from years of being a workhorse were starting to show up on his relatively young body. He told me this past year, "Everything still works, haha, just hurts when it does." And he kept on taking care of business, but not just his own business. Even when Patrick was struggling inside with things that happened years ago, things that he was still suffering from years later, he kept trying and looking for ways to help others. Patrick sought out people in need, meeting them where they were at, and became their ask for help with anything at any time kind of friend. Patrick wasn't afraid of death. He never bought into the modern-day fantasy of immortality, buy this, do this, and you can live forever. But Patrick truly valued life. He would do anything to help and protect a child. Without a second thought, Patrick would put someone else's life ahead of his own. Patrick was always chivalrous towards women, but not in a condescending way. And he loved animals, especially his best friend, Reggie, a Springer Spaniel, who he took with him everywhere he went. Patrick was a man who wasn't afraid to take a risk, had a heart of gold, and was a true romantic. When someone dies suddenly, it's always hard. When someone dies relatively young, it's even harder. And when a parent loses a child, there's no greater loss. Patrick knew his soul was confined within a human body that was not that much different than a car or other machine. A body is fragile, develops wear and tear, and will eventually no longer work. Sometimes it stops working suddenly, other times the body gradually sputters out. During Patrick's 52 years, he racked up the miles, racked up a lot of wear and tear, but kept cruising along despite having accumulated irreparable damage. But what's really important is that Patrick was on the right road. He was pointed in the right direction. He was on a highway to heaven, living a life of charity, choosing the light, day by day, and seeking out those in need. What would Patrick tell us to do? Well, I can't say for sure, but I'll tell you what I think. I think he would tell us that in the end, the only lasting thing we leave behind is the wisdom and stories we share with others, the skills and values we teach, and the hand-ups and high fives we give. When we live like this, he'd say, our speck of life grows into the fabric of generations. This is how Patrick lived, and this is how he planned to die. Patrick always told my boys, remember, moms need extra hugs. And he always told me, remember, Brian needs hugs too. So I think he'd also tell us to remember to keep showing the people who we love that we love them. And lastly, I think he'd say, get back in the game, work hard, play hard, and do the right thing. In a blink, we'll be together again. Make each moment count, not just for you, but for others too. And you can follow me on that highway to heaven. Until then, hurry up and get going.